Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video, and today we are talking about the most recent chapter of The Mandalorian, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. So if you haven't seen it yet, you know the deal. Come back once you have. So Chapter 14 of The Mandalorian was interesting for a lot of reasons. One thing that a lot of people have really been latching onto is the fact that it settled a debate that had been raging since the decanonization of Star Wars Legends, and that is the heritage of Boba Fett and more specifically his father Jango. Well, that question was answered straight up in the most recent episode of The Mandalorian, where Boba Fett lays out the fact that Jango was actually a Mandalorian foundling and he participated in the Mandalorian Civil Wars. Now, this is something that had been questioned, with sources in fact suggesting that he wasn't a Mandalorian, but now we have an answer once and for all. That revelation comes near the end of the episode, basically as a way to ensure that the Mandalorian and Boba Fett will work together in the future, but during that scene, we get a look at the chain code contained within Boba Fett's armor. Now, I have to admit, I did not know that the Mandoa written language was fully translatable, but wouldn't you know it, someone on Reddit has taken a cipher to it, and we can now at least partially read what Boba Fett was showing Din Djarin. And again, I can't take any credit for this. I saw this on Star Wars Leak, and a user named Zach Gardner made the translation that I saw, but the community has taken it apart a few times now. But here are some words we get from the cipher. We get Fett, Boba, Father Fett, Mentor Jast, with the end of that cut off, Concord Dawn, the year, took into, and then what looks like foundling. Alright, so the Jast is something that a lot of Star Wars Legends fans, especially those who are interested in the story of the Mandalorians, will probably instantly recognize, because Jast is almost certainly a reference to Jaster Mereel. So in the Legends Expanded Universe, Jaster Mereel was what was known as a journeyman protector, almost like a police officer on Concord Dawn, which by the way is also mentioned by name, and which is one of the planets in the Mandalorian sector. Jaster Mereel was involved in the Mandalorian Civil War, which was also name-dropped in this episode. And I have to admit, I had to look some of this up because my memory on this topic was a little bit fuzzy, but essentially Death Watch, the organization we know from the Clone Wars especially, was searching for Jaster Mereel, who was the current Mandalore and the leader of a Mandalorian splinter faction known as the True Mandalorians, which led them to the farm of the Fett family. Jango's parents were killed in a firefight, and eventually Jaster would basically adopt Jango Fett as his own. This is very similar to what it looks like canon will be doing with Jango Fett's backstory. Interestingly, even in Legends, despite the fact that Jango's family lived on Concord Dawn and Jango's father was a journeyman protector, the family itself was not Mandalorian, so even in Legends, Fett was sort of adopted into the culture. At least that's my read on it. There is a little bit of debate about that issue, and Mandalorian lore in the Star Wars Expanded Universe, especially around Fett's family, is particularly complicated. This is because the tale of Jaster Mereel was actually originally envisioned to be quite different, with Jaster Mereel being the name of Boba Fett, his past life basically. So we talked about this on the channel before, not for a while though. There was in Star Wars Legends a few anthology books, many of which were really good, including my favorite I think, Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, and more relevant to today, Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Tales of the Bounty Hunters has a short story called The Last One Standing, the tale of Boba Fett, which presented at that time the official backstory for Boba Fett, which was radically different than what we'd get later. Not only is Boba Fett's backstory different, but the character of Fett is also significantly changed in later works. In this, Boba Fett is almost religious. He takes issue with spice trading, for example, not because he has any sort of contract against spice trading, but because he thinks it's immoral. He seems to be celibate. It's very different. The story is interesting though because it shows Boba Fett / Jaster Mereel's life through several different eras, ending in 19 ABY. But the relevant portions which discuss Jaster Mereel basically lay out Boba Fett's life before he became a bounty hunter. He was a journeyman protector known as Jaster Mereel from the world Concord Dawn, who was exiled for killing a fellow journeyman protector. Anyway, I recommend you read the story, even though aspects of it have changed. We see an interesting look at Boba Fett, how he sees his sort of morality, the fact that he'll kill 14-year-olds with no problem, but is against spice trading, and we get to see some interesting insight into his relationship with Han Solo especially. Of course, Boba Fett's story would have to be changed because of something pretty minor you might have heard of called the Clone Wars, and the character of Jaster was retconned to be the sort of adoptive father almost of Jango Fett. I will say as well, the scene where Jango is being rescued and brought as a foundling into the Mandalorians, because that's what he was in Legends as well, a foundling, is pretty similar to the events we get with Din Djarin, and personally I'm really excited to see how the franchise handles kind of the story of Boba moving forward. Boba Fett plays a very important role in Star Wars Legends, arguably a little bit too important, especially as we move into like the Legacy era. Boba Fett, despite being very sick from his encounter with the Sarlacc, is still active nearly 40 years after Return of the Jedi, and he plays some pretty major roles in the galaxy. First of all, Boba Fett does become Mandalore. I don't see that happening in Star Wars canon, but it did in Legends. He helps the galaxy, of course, in the Yuuzhan Vong War, and there's this really awesome scene where he actually comes to the rescue of Han Solo on Kahlua Station, which is pretty surprising given the history of the characters, and probably the only time up to that point that Han had been happy to see a Mandalorian, much less Boba Fett. Then later, and this is where things get a little off the rail in my opinion, he trains Jaina Solo, who's the daughter, of course, of Han and Leia, to help kill Darth Caedus, also known as Jacen Solo, the son, the oldest son of Han and Leia, the only remaining son at that point. Later on, he's got to deal with health problems related to the Sarlacc pit. He tries to track down some old cloners from Kamino. And then at the end of the Second Galactic Civil War, the war where Jacen Solo basically put the Galactic Alliance against itself, a nanovirus is released on Mandalore, which basically prevents Boba Fett and his family from returning because it specifically attacks his genes. Not the greatest parts of Star Wars Legends, so without that baggage, I'm interested to see where the character will go moving forward. But I'm also excited because this episode in particular really showed that they're still kind of going with the background lore of the character, which I always thought was great, and they're paying homage to what came first. And that's one thing that's great about The Mandalorian. Like, we got Jaster Mereel, albeit only indirectly mentioned on screen, and it's actually referencing things that have happened and have long been a part of the fabric of the universe, at least for us super fans, but are now being brought to screen, just like with the Krayt Dragon Pearl or whatever else. But guys, until next time, hope you enjoyed this video and this breakdown of The Mandalorian. Is there something you'd like to see me cover next? Let me know that and more down below. Until next time though guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.